The buzzing fluorescent lights of Hawthorne Clinic flickered above me as I sat in the waiting room, flipping through an outdated magazine. The quiet hum of the room settled around me until my phone rang. "Mom," my daughter's voice said, clipped and emotionless. "We're leaving tomorrow. I'm selling your lake cabin and your Jeep. We need the money." I froze. "You would..." "No time to explain. We're moving to Austria for an investment opportunity. It's done. You'll get a small portion of the money." "Okay, bye." The call ended. 48 years of raising her, 48 years of sacrifices, discarded in 40 seconds. But instead of crying, something inside me went still strangely calm, because what my daughter didn't know was that she had just activated a series of events she could never imagine. My name is Evelyn Carter, age 72, recently widowed. Until that moment, I believed I understood my daughter Marissa, but grief blinds more than love ever could. My husband Henry died 6 months ago. Sitting across from me at our kitchen table in the home we'd shared for nearly 5 decades, his last act had been buttering my toast and kissing my forehead. The memory still felt raw enough to touch. After that, Marissa suddenly became a tentivore, so I thought. She visited frequently, insisted on taking me to doctor appointments, and even managed the funeral arrangements. She smiled warmly, spoke softly, and told me she'd take care of me now that I was alone. Now I recognized that smile for what it really was: strategy. The lake cabin she sold, Henry and I bought it when she was 16. Summers there were sacred swimming, late-night bonfires, laughter echoing across the water, and the Jeep, Henry's pride, the one he polished every Sunday morning as if it were made of gold. Its leather seats still held the faint scent of his cologne. She sold all of it, and she thought that would leave me with nothing. But she was wrong, because 3 days before he died, Henry had handed me a manila envelope. "Not yet," he'd told me. "Open it when you're ready," and not a moment sooner. In the chaos of grief, I had tucked it into the bottom drawer of my dresser and forgotten it now. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The nurse called me into the exam room. The doctor said my health was good, my vitals excellent, and that I should rest more. But my mind wasn't in that room. It was already home, opening that envelope by the time the city bus rattled toward my neighborhood. The truth was clear. Marissa and her husband Dylan had orchestrated this. Dylan had always resented me, my questions, my presence, my existence, perhaps. He wanted control, and Marissa had followed him blindly. I walked home slowly. The house felt colder, as if anticipating what I was about to find. I entered my bedroom, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out the envelope. Henry's familiar handwriting whispered across the front. "For Evelyn, when the time is right." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were deeds, bank documents, share certificates, a letter. As I read Henry's words, my breath caught in my throat. He had left me not just the lake cabin, not just savings. He had left me 7 properties, 3 business investments, and full ownership of the apartment complex where Marissa lived with Dylan. He had hidden it all behind a company I'd never heard of, and I was now the sole heir. The woman my daughter believed she had, stripped bare, had, in truth, more wealth than Marissa and Dylan had ever imagined. I sat in silence as evening shadows crept across the walls. My daughter thought she had taken everything from me, but she had only taken the first step toward losing far more than she could ever comprehend, because now I had a plan. What Evelyn does next will set in motion a transformation and a reckoning that Marissa never expected. And it all begins with one phone call Evelyn is about to make. The morning after I discovered Henry's secret, the world felt different, like a fog had lifted from my mind. Grief hadn't disappeared, but it had taken on a new shape, no longer paralyzing, no longer fogging my judgment. Now it was a companion, pushing me forward. I sat at the kitchen table with Henry's documents spread out in front of me. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the house. Outside, the neighbors walked their dogs and waved at me with pity, a widow abandoned by her daughter. If only they knew. I poured myself a cup of tea, steadying my thoughts. The next step was clear. I needed a lawyer, not just any lawyer, someone who understood discretion. I called Mr. Wallace, the attorney who had handled Henry's will, calm, polite, always wearing a bow tie. He had attended the funeral and told me, "If you ever need anything, Mrs. Carter, just call." Well, today was that day. "Mr. Wallace, it's Evelyn," I said when he answered. "I need to see you, urgently." His tone shifted instantly. "I can meet you first thing tomorrow morning." Perfect. After hanging up, I let the house fall silent again. It wasn't loneliness anymore, it was planning. The next morning, I dressed with more care than I had in Monza, navy dress whose fabric still held Henry's aftershave from the last time he hugged me while I wore it. I styled my hair, put on a soft shade of lipstick, and looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, I recognized the woman staring back at me. When I arrived, Mr. Wallace greeted me kindly, but when I placed Henry's envelope on the table, the color drained from his face. "Mrs. Carter, Evelyn, this is significant." "I know," I said. "Tell me what I can do." For the next hour, he explained everything, every property, every investment, every account, every hidden business Henry had carefully built, all in my name, and the apartment complex on Larkspur Avenue. I asked, keeping my voice steady. He flipped through the pages. "You are the sole owner, including all leasing rights. You have full authority." Meaning I owned the building Marissa lived in. Meaning she and Dylan, who had laughed about their European future, were tenants in my building. "How long would it take," I asked, "to re-establish control of these properties?" Quietly. He blinked. "Yes, we can do that. It will take a few weeks, but it's doable." Then he hesitated. "Do you want to press charges against your daughter? Against Dylan?" "No," I said immediately. "Not yet." His brows lifted. "Then, what do you want to do?" I leaned back in the chair, and for the first time since Henry died, I felt like I wasn't sinking, I was rising. "I want them to think I'm exactly what they believe me to be: weak, dependent, and poor." Mr. Wallace nodded slowly. "A strategic choice." "Yes. And while they're celebrating their little escape to Europe," I paused, a smile touching the corner of my lips, "I want everything they sold returned to me." He swallowed. "I'll handle it." 2 weeks passed. On the outside, I lived as the quiet widow, the one who walked to the grocery store because her daughter sold her car, the one neighbors whispered about, the one everyone pitied. But inside my home, I was a woman rebuilding an empire. Every few days, Mr. Wallace updated me. The lake cabin, recovered. The Jeep, traced, negotiated, returned. The properties, transferred back under my control. My phone stayed silent. No calls from Marissa, no messages, no updates. She had left the country with Dylan, cutting me off like an old branch. I checked her social media once, nothing. It was as if she had erased me from her life completely, and still, I let her believe she had one. Then, one Thursday afternoon, as golden light filtered across my living room, Mr. Wallace called. "Evelyn," he said, "the last filing went through. You now have control of the Larkspur apartment complex." Perfect, because soon, Marissa would return, and when she did, the first surprise waiting for her would not be a hug, it would be a letter. An eviction notice. I held the phone to my ear, letting the weight of the moment settle into my bones. "Deliver it," I said. "As you wish." I hung up, stepped to the window, watched the street below. My daughter had run from responsibility. She had laughed while stripping me bare. She had chosen her husband's schemes over her own mother. She believed she had left me behind. But now, I was the storm coming for her. As Evelyn prepares for the fallout, a piece of news arrives that accelerates everything. Marissa is returning far sooner than expected, and not for the reasons Evelyn thinks. 3 days after the eviction notice was delivered to the Larkspur apartment complex, I expected silence. After all, Marissa was still somewhere in Austria, posting photos of mountain views and overpriced pastries, but silence was not what came. Instead, at 7:30 in the morning, the phone rang. I answered, thinking it might be Mr. Wallace, but it wasn't. It was Aurora Bennett, my neighbor of 30 years, a woman who knew everything that happened on Hawthorne Street before it even happened. "Evelyn," she blurted out, breathless, "you won't believe what I just heard." "What is it?" "Maurice's back." I froze. "Back?" I repeated. "Already?" "Yes. She landed last night at Lincoln International. Alone." "Alone." My pulse quickened. "Where's Dylan?" "That's the part no one knows," Aurora said. "But rumor has it he didn't come back with her." I pressed my fingers to my temple. This was sooner than expected. Much sooner. "My plan wasn't fully in place," Yetura continued, lowering her voice, although no one else was around. "My sister-in-law works at the airport. She said Marissa looked terrible, crying, shaking. 1 suitcase, no jewelry, not even her wedding ring." I leaned back in my chair, processing the information that Dylan had abandoned her. Good, but then another thought struck me, one that chilled me. If Marissa was already back, she might have already received the eviction notice. Did she go to the Larkspur apartment? I asked. She tried, Aurora whispered, but her keys didn't work. She had to get the superintendent to let her in. My heart thudded once, twice. So she was standing inside an apartment she believed she owned, holding a letter telling her she had 30 days to get out. The timing could not have been more perfect or more dangerous. Marissa was unstable, hurt, and hurt people made unpredictable choices. Thank you, Aurora, I said. Please don't mention any of this to anyone else. You have my word, she replied. But before hanging up, she added softly, Evelyn, be careful. She's your daughter, but desperation can make people cruel. I knew that better than anyone. That afternoon, as the warm sunlight filtered across my kitchen table, my phone rang again. I didn't need to check the screen to know who it was. I answered calmly, hello, a shaky breath, then a desperate voice, Mom. I closed my eyes. Hello, Marissa. Mom, I need to talk to you. Her voice cracked. Please, it's urgent. How was Austria? I asked mildly. She inhaled sharply, as if the question physically hurt her. I can't talk about that right now. Mom, I received a letter, an eviction notice. It says the building is owned by some company I've never heard of. Carter Holdings. Do you know anything about this? Of course I did. Henry had named the company after me, but she didn't need to know that yet. No, honey, I said gently. Are you sure it's legitimate? I don't know. I'm scared. The bank is coming after me for debts I didn't even know existed. Dylan, he lied about almost everything. Ah, there it was. The unraveling. What happened to him? I asked. He stayed in Austria, she whispered, with another woman. Her voice broke. He took all our remaining money, Mom, everything. And now I'm back, and I'm losing the apartment, and the banks are threatening legal action, and she choked on her words. For a moment, a tiny piece of my heart twisted, but I held my tone steady. Where are you now? I asked softly. In the apartment, but I don't know for how long. Then, hesitantly, Mom, can I come see you? Please, I don't have anyone else. I let a calculated silence stretch just long enough to let the desperation sink in. Then I exhaled gently. Of course, Marissa, come home. Thank you, she whispered, crying. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet again, my tea untouched and cold. The daughter who had thrown me away like an old coat was coming back, not because she loved me, not because she felt guilt, but because she had nowhere else to go. I rose from my chair and walked to the window, watching the street with a stillness Henry would have recognized instantly. Marissa was about to return to the house she tried to erase, and soon she would learn the truth about everything, but not yet. Not until she learned her first real lesson. Marissa arrives at Evelyn's home, but she brings something unexpected with her, something that threatens to unravel Evelyn's carefully built plan. An hour later, Marissa's car pulled into my driveway. Well, not her car, a dented rental sedan with a cracked headlight. She stepped out slowly, dragging 2 suitcases behind her, her shoulders hunched forward as if the world itself had climbed onto her back. She looked nothing like the polished woman who had boarded a plane for Europe 3 weeks earlier. Her elegant coat was wrinkled, her hair frayed, eyes swollen from crying, and her wedding ring gone. When she reached the porch steps, she paused, gripping the rail as if she needed help just standing upright. I opened the door before she knocked. Mom, she whispered. Her voice broke. I stepped aside. Come in, honey. She walked inside and stopped in the entryway, scanning the familiar living room, the family photos, the old-fashioned floral rug she always hated, the wooden clock Henry had repaired 50 times. She seemed smaller than I remembered, or maybe the truth had finally stripped her pride away. I made tea, I said. Chamomile. She nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. Thank you. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Henry and I had eaten breakfast every morning for 48 years, the same table where Marissa used to do homework as a child. Now she sat there trembling. For a full minute, she said nothing. Then finally, Mom, everything's falling apart. I didn't respond. I simply waited. It was astonishing how silence could loosen the truth from a person. She inhaled shakily. Dylan left me. I stayed still. I'm sorry, honey. He met someone in Austria, some 20-something hotel worker. He took our savings and disappeared. She rubbed her eyes with trembling fingers. He lied about the business opportunity, lied about the debts, lied about everything, all predictable. Did you know he took out loans in my name? She whispered. Did you? I countered gently. She shook her head, looking down at her hands. No. He forged my signature. The banks had been trying to contact me for weeks, but Dylan intercepted everything. My stomach tightened at the lie she believed, that she had no responsibility in this. She hadn't forged anything, true, but she had chosen to trust blindly, and she had chosen to leave me. Her strongest flaw wasn't malice. It was refusal to see consequences. "What are you going to do?" I asked softly. She let out a broken laugh. "I don't know. I don't have money. I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to stay." She swallowed hard. "Mom, I know I don't deserve your help, but can I live here for a while? Just until I figure things out." I had been waiting for this moment, not with spite, with intention. "Of course," I said, my voice soft and warm. "You'll always have a home here." She burst into tears, loud, desperate sobs. I reached out and held her. Her body shook against mine, just like when she was little, and scraped her knee on the sidewalk. For a moment, my old instinct protect, comfort, fixed tried to rise up, but I held it back. Marissa needed to feel the weight of what she'd done before she could become the come-when woman Henry and I always hoped she'd be. When she finally calmed, I said gently, "Why don't you bring your things into your old room?" She nodded and went to the car. I followed her to the porch yet froze. When I saw the back seat through the open door, there was a third suitcase, not hers, not Dylan's, single quotes S. child size, decorated with cartoon animals. My blood ran cold. Marissa reached for it cautiously, avoiding my eyes. "Marissa," I said slowly, "who does that belong to?" She clutched the small handle, her jaw tightening. "Mom, there's something I didn't tell you." My heartbeat thudded deep in my ears. "Tell me now." She stared at the suitcase for a long moment before lifting her eyes to mine. "Mom," she whispered, trembling, "I'm pregnant." The porch spun around me. This was not part of the plan. A baby changed everything. Every calculation, every intention, every lesson. And now, every move I made would affect not just my daughter, but my grandchild. Evelyn must decide whether to accelerate her plan, soften it, or dismantle it altogether, because the truth behind Marissa's pregnancy is far darker than anyone expects. For a moment, I could not speak. The world narrowed to the tiny suitcase sitting on my porch, the cartoon animals, the soft pastel zipper, the weight of a life I had not expected. I looked at Marissa, her trembling hands, her swollen eyes, her breaths coming too quickly. "How far along?" I finally asked. "For months," she whispered. "For months, before she left for Europe. Right in the middle of planning that business trip. Before she sold my lake cabin. Before she sold Henry's Jeep. Before she cut me out of her life." My pulse tightened. "And Dylan?" I asked quietly. Her eyes darkened. "He doesn't know." I stared at her. "He doesn't know you're pregnant?" "No," she swallowed. "I found out the day before we flew to Austria. I didn't want to tell him yet. I needed time." And then, her voice broke. Then everything fell apart so fast. I breathed slowly, carefully, forcing calmness into my voice. "Why didn't you tell me?" She squeezed her eyes shut. "Because I was ashamed, Mom. I sold your things. I took everything Dad left you. I treated you horribly. How was I supposed to tell you I was bringing a child into this mess?" The confession hung in the air like smoke. She wasn't lying. She wasn't manipulating. She was drowning. I took a seat on the porch chair. She sat beside me, clutching the suitcase. "What's in that?" I asked gently. She opened the small case with shaky fingers. Inside were folded baby clothes, just a few onesies, a tiny pair of socks, ultrasound photos, vitamins, and a small stuffed lamb. I touched the lamb, feeling the softness between my fingers. The air tightened in my chest. Grandchild. Henry would have cried from joy. But with joy came risk and the unraveling of my carefully constructed plan. I closed the suitcase gently. "We'll get through this, Marissa," I said softly. She broke again, leaning her head against my shoulder, sobbing with relief. But beneath my calm exterior, my mind was moving fast, precise, cold, because a baby meant complications. Legal complications, financial complications, emotional complications, and above all, a child's future was now tied to every decision I made. Later that evening, long after Marissa had fallen asleep in her childhood bedroom, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was dark except for the light above me. Henry's documents lay open again, but this time they felt different. He had trusted me to protect our daughter, but now I had someone else to think about. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. I looked up. Marissa stood in the doorway, pale, barefoot, shaking. "Mom, can't sleep?" I asked. She hesitated, then sat across from me. There's something else, she whispered. My stomach tightened. What is it? She rubbed her hands together, eyes darting to the side. The eviction notice. That company, Carter Holdings, she swallowed. I searched the name online. The company has no public owner listed, no address, just a law firm. My breath stilled. She leaned forward. Mom, I think this company might be connected to Dad somehow. I kept my face still as stone. Why do you say that? Because when I looked closely, her voice dropped. The signature on the notice looks like the same handwriting he used on the postcards he sent me when I was little. A chill ran through me. She wasn't wrong. The company had been named after me, but Henry had signed the original documents, and Marissa had recognized it. I folded my hands slowly, keeping my expression neutral. Even if the signature is similar, I said quietly, your father has been gone for months. He can't evict you. She shook her head. Mom, I don't understand what's happening, but someone wants me out of that apartment. And the timing. It's too perfect. Her eyes met mine, filled with fear. Mom, what if someone is trying to punish me? My breath caught. Her words meant as a desperate question stabbed deeper than she realized. Before I could respond, a sharp knock echoed through the house. We both turned. 3 loud, firm knocks at the front door. At nearly midnight, Marissa's voice trembled. Mom, who could that be? I stood slowly, pulse pounding, every nerve alert, because I already knew whoever was behind that door was about to change everything. The visitor brings news that threatens to expose Evelyn's secret hand, forces her to choose between protecting her plan or protecting her daughter. The knocks grew louder. 3 strikes. A pause. 3 more. Not frantic, not uncertain. Deliberate. Marissa grabbed my arm. Mom, please don't open it. I gently pried her hand away. Stay back. She hovered behind me, clutching her robe around her trembling frame. I approached the door slowly, every muscle in my body taut, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. Through the peephole, I saw a tall figure in a dark coat, shoulders squared, holding something in his hand. I opened the door only a crack. Yes, I asked calmly. He lifted a badge. Mrs. Carter, I'm Detective Rowan Hale, Lincoln Police Department. I need a word with you, urgently. Marissa's breath hitched behind me, but I kept my voice steady. About what? Your daughter's husband, or rather, her estranged husband, Marissa gasped, stepping into view despite my warning. Dylan, what about him? She asked. Detective Hale's eyes flicked to her, then back to me. May I come inside? I hesitated, but something in his expression told me this wasn't a visit I could politely postpone. Yes, I said. Come in. He stepped inside, removing his hat, scanning the living room with a practiced eye. Marissa sat on the couch, shaking. I sat across from the detective. What happened? She asked, voice cracking. Hal drew a breath. 4 days ago, Austrian authorities received a report from the hotel where you and your husband were staying. A disturbance in one of the rooms. Broken furniture. Blood. Marissa's face went white. Blood, she whispered. Who's unknown, he said, but witnesses reported seeing Dylan leaving the hotel in a hurry with a woman. Marissa closed her eyes, swallowing hard. But that's not why I'm here. The detective continued. Both of us looked up. Hale pulled a manila folder from his coat. My stomach tightened the sight of it, far too familiar. This was forwarded to us because your address, Mrs. Carter's address, was listed as a point of contact. I blinked. My address. He nodded. Inside the folder were documents sealed with Austrian police, stamps, photos, statements, an itemized list of evidence, and near the bottom, a single line typed in red ink, property in question. Carter Holdings and Associated Assets. My blood iced. Marissa stared at the page, confused. Mom, isn't that the same name? Yes, I said quietly. Detective Hale continued. It appears Dylan was under investigation for fraud schemes linked to several international properties. He may have used the names of American companies to launder assets. He paused, watching me carefully. And the name that appeared most frequently was Carter Holdings. My spine stiffened. Double quotes, Mrs. Carter. He said slowly, are you involved with that company? Silence. Marissa's gaze whipped toward me, wide and fearful. Mom, she whispered, tell him you're not. Detective Hale's eyes pinned me in place. If the company is legitimate, or you're a victim of identity misuse, I need to know now. I inhaled. I had 2 choices, tell the truth and risk exposing the empire. Henry left me before I was ready, or lie and risk an avalanche of consequences if the truth surfaced later. Before I could speak, the detective continued. One more thing. He pulled another document from the folder, this one in a clear evidence sleeve. Letter. Written in Henry's handwriting, addressed to the Austrian authorities, and dated 3 days before his death. My heart stopped. Detective Hale placed it on the table. Carefully. This letter, he said, claims that Carter Holdings is fully legitimate and that its assets belong solely to his wife. But there's a problem. Marissa's eyes darted between us, terrified. What problem? She asked. Detective Hale pointed to the bottom of the letter. The signature was verified as Henry's. That part is authentic. He leaned back. But the date is not. A cold pressure pressed against my ribs. What do you mean? I whispered. The ink used in this signature, Hale tapped the page, was manufactured 9 months after Henry died. Marissa's mouth fell open. That's impossible, she breathed. Dad didn't forge anything. He wouldn't. Detective Hale's voice was low, measured. Someone forged your husband's signature. Someone with access to his writing. Someone who knew his style very closely. His gaze landed on me. Double quotes, Mrs. Carter. I need to ask this directly. The room froze around me. Did you forge this letter? Marissa shot to her feet. Detective Nitrogen monoxide. My mother would never. He raised a hand. I'm not accusing. I'm asking, because the evidence suggests insider access. My breath felt thin. My heart beat loud. I met his gaze without flinching. I didn't forge anything. He studied my face for a long, lingering moment, then closed the folder. That's all I needed for tonight, he said, rising. But this isn't over. I'll be returning in a few days once more of the evidence arrives from Austria. He stepped toward the door, pausing once more. And Mrs. Carter, yes, be very careful. Someone involved in this case is lying, and lying well. The door shut behind him. Silence filled the house like smoke. Marissa turned to me slowly, fear clouding her eyes. Mom, she whispered, what's going on? Why would Dad be writing letters overseas? Why is your company, his company, part of a fraud investigation? I stared at the closed door, because I knew something the detective did not. Something Marissa could never have imagined. Henry hadn't written that letter, but I knew exactly who had. The forged letter reveals a betrayal closer than Evelyn ever expected, forcing her to confront a truth that shatters everything she believed about her own family. For a long moment after Detective Hale left, neither Marissa nor I spoke. The house felt colder, as if the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed suddenly louder, counting down to something I wasn't ready to face. Marissa finally sat down again, rubbing her arms as though she were freezing. Mom, she whispered, what does he mean? Who would forge Dad's signature? And why would anyone drag our family into something like this? I opened my mouth to answer, but the truth sitting in my chest was too heavy, because I did know someone who could forge Henry's handwriting, someone who had seen him write thousands of times, someone who grew up watching him sign letters, checks, documents, someone who could mimic the slant of the H, the flourish of the Y, the loop in the R. Someone with motive. Marissa. My daughter. But not for the reasons the detective imagined, and not in the way she feared. I took a slow breath. Marissa, when did you last see Dylan in Austria? She blinked, caught off guard. The night before he left. We had been arguing. I was packing because I planned to return home early, before he found out I was pregnant. Where were the hotel documents? The ones for the business deal he claimed to have. In my suitcase, she said slowly. Why? I stared at her. And your suitcase, did it ever leave your sight? She opened her mouth then froze. No, she whispered, the realization hitting her. No, Mom, it didn't. He went through my things when I was in the shower. He took my keys to get into the lobby printer. Her voice cracked. He could have taken anything. My heart twisted painfully. For a moment, relief washed over me. Maybe she hadn't written that forged letter. Maybe she hadn't betrayed me. But that relief was short, because there was still one piece that didn't fit. Marissa, I said softly, did you ever tell Dylan about Carter Holdings? She shook her head vigorously. I didn't know it existed until I got that eviction notice. Mom, I swear, I didn't know anything about your assets. I studied her face, the exhaustion, the raw fear, the confusion, that she was hiding something. And hiding it badly. I leaned forward. Honey, what aren't you telling me? Her lips trembled. She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers until the knuckles went white. Mom, I didn't tell Dylan about Carter Holdings, okay, but, her voice dropped to a whisper, I did tell someone else. The hairs on the back of my neck rose. Who? She swallowed hard. I told Aunt Lorraine, my breath caught. Henry's sister, Lorraine chop-tongued, bitter, money-hungry Lorraine, who hadn't spoken to me since Henry's funeral. After screaming in the hallway that I had stolen her brother's life savings, it all snapped into place. The forged signature, the stolen company information, the sudden Austrian investigation, the name Carter Holdings, scattered across places it shouldn't be. Lorraine, it had Lorraine's bitterness, and her handwriting skills. Henry's sister had inherited only resentment, and she had been furious that Henry left everything to me. Marissa's voice quivered. Mom, I didn't think she'd do anything. She was just asking how you were doing financially after Dad. And I said, I wasn't sure, since you never talked about money. I didn't know she'd take it this far. I stared at her. You trusted your aunt with my financial situation, I whispered. The same woman who accused me of trapping your father for money. Marissa burst into tears. I know it was stupid, Mom. I wasn't thinking. I thought she cared. I thought she wanted to help. No, Lorraine never wanted to help anyone. She wanted what she believed she was owed. And now, I was almost certain she was behind the forged letter and, possibly behind the investigation, the attempted asset transfers, and maybe even Dylan's disappearance. This had gone far beyond a daughter's betrayal. This was a family war. I stood from the table, my legs shaking, though my voice remained unnervingly calm. Marissa, go to bed. We'll talk more in the morning. Mom, please, I said softly. You need rest. She nodded weakly and rose, heading toward her room. I waited until her door clicked shut. Then, I reached under the kitchen drawer and pulled out Henry's old lockbox to one he told me never to open unless I felt threatened. My hands trembled as I turned the key and lifted the lid. Inside were documents, photos, a flash drive, and a sealed letter addressed to me. In Henry's real handwriting. My heart pounded as I unfolded it, and the moment my eyes reached the first line, the world tilted beneath me. Double quotes, Evelyn, if you are reading this, then something has gone very wrong, and I fear someone in our family is trying to destroy everything I built. I covered my mouth, because the next line revealed something I never suspected. Something about Lorraine. Something about Marissa. Something about a secret Henry had kept for 30 years. A truth that could break my daughter. A truth that could destroy us both. Henry's letter exposes a devastating family secret that forces Evelyn to confront a choice she never imagined: protect her daughter from the truth, or use it to finally take back everything that was stolen. My hands shook as I held Henry's letter. The paper was soft from age, the ink slightly faded, but the weight of the words felt heavier than anything I had carried since the day he died. I read the first paragraph again, barely breathing. Evelyn, if you are reading this, then something has gone very wrong. Someone in our family is trying to destroy everything I built. My chest tightened. It wasn't just a warning, it was a confession. With a deep breath, I continued. I never wanted to burden you with this, but Lorraine has been involved in dangerous financial schemes for years. She came to me for help loans, signatures, business fronts, and I refused. She believes she is entitled to my assets. She is not. She will do anything to obtain what I built for you and Marissa. A shudder ran through me. So I had been right. Lorraine was behind everything. But then came the line that made my blood go cold. Evelyn, there is something else you must know. Something about Marissa. I gripped the edge of the table, steadying myself. Years ago, when Marissa was only 10, Lorraine used her name to open a hidden account. She placed assets under Marissa's identity without her knowing, for her own protection. She claimed, later, when the authorities investigated Lorraine's operations, they found the account and froze it. Lorraine blamed me. She always has. I covered my mouth, trying to steady my breathing. All these years, Lorraine's resentment hadn't been about money alone. It had been about fear. She had used Marissa as a shield, and when Henry protected our daughter by ensuring Lorraine couldn't access anything again, she turned her rage on us. But the letter wasn't finished. Be patient with Marissa. She has no idea. And if the truth ever comes out, she will be devastated. She will believe she is the reason her aunt lost everything. She will believe she ruined lives before she was even a teenager. Tears burned behind my eyes. Marissa, the woman who already carried guilt like an anchor, could never handle that truth. I read the final lines slowly. Protect her, Evelyn, even from the past. And be careful. Lorraine is not done. The room felt smaller, the air heavy. Henry had been protecting us until the day he died, and now it was my turn. I folded the letter and placed it back in the lockbox. Then I sat in the darkness for a long time, thinking. Lorraine knew about Carter Holdings. She knew Henry left me everything. And once Marissa accidentally mentioned the company, Lorraine saw her opportunity. Dylan had been a pawn. Marissa had been a tool. The forged signature, the Austrian connection, it all pointed back to Lorraine's old network. And now, Detective Hale was watching me. I had one goal left: protect Marissa and the child she carried, at any cost. The next morning, Marissa found me in the kitchen staring at a cold cup of tea. "Mom, you didn't sleep," she whispered. I shook my head. "There are things you need to know." Her face paled. "About Dad, about the letter, about Lorraine." Her eyes widened. "Aunt Lorraine, what about her?" I reached for her hand, steadying my voice. "Honey, Lorraine has been involved in criminal financial schemes for decades. Dad kept it from you to protect you." Marissa stiffened. "No, that can't be true. She helped raise me. She used your name," I said gently, "when you were a child, for an account tied to illegal transactions. Dad saved you." He closed it quietly. "She lost everything, but she blamed him, and she blamed me." Marissa stared at me, horror creeping into her expression. Why would she involve Dylan? Why the forged signatures? Why the fraud investigation? "Because she wants revenge," I said quietly, "and because she wants what your father built." Her lips trembled. "Mom, this is my fault." I tilted her chin up. "No, none of this is your fault." She collapsed into my arms, not sobbing this time, but shaking from the weight of knowledge that was too heavy for her heart. I held her tightly. "Mom," she whispered against my shoulder, "what do we do now?" "We prepare," I said softly. "We stay together. We keep the truth where it belongs, with us, and we protect the baby. That child will be born into safety, not fear." She nodded, clinging tighter. But I didn't tell her everything. Not about the flash drive in the lockbox, labeled L. Carter, evidence. Not about the coded bank records Henry had compiled. Not about the international contacts who owed him favors. Not about the quiet message I sent that morning to Mr. Wallace: "Activate the contingency plan." Because Lorraine wasn't done, and neither was I that evening. As the sun dipped low and the house settled into quiet, I stood by the window, watching the street with sharp, steady eyes. My daughter was safe. My grandchild would be safe. And I would finish what Henry started, whatever it took. A car slowed at the corner. A dark sedan. I recognized the silhouette in the back seat. Lorraine. She looked directly at my house, directly at me. Then the car rolled away. I felt the calm rise inside me, not fear, not panic. Resolve. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was war, and I intended to win. Asterisk, if you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.